Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Blast off on another episode of Hero Paranormal Podcast. Broadcasting from the base at La Madre Mountain, south of Area 51. My name is Ryan, the original overseer of the airwaves, bringing you an epic episode tonight. Childhood black projects, social programming, Antarctic anomalies, advanced technology, secret South Pole technology is really what we're aiming at. A phenomenal research investigator currently coming to us out of Alaska, Eric Hecker, is someone who helps keep others safe and helps them see through the social programming. Eric has his own podcast you need to check out, as well as website called Deciphering My Experience. Eric has had more synchronistic, unlikely, and coincidental experiences than anyone could expect, with childhood black projects pretty much starting everything off. He was raised on Long Island, home of the Montauk Project, and it is likely that he was a part of, well, some secret projects run most likely by the DIA and CIA. His life led him to unique experiences as a submariner. In the submarine service of our country, Eric has had uncanny experiences working for, well, some of the most powerful people in the world who were living in Long Island. And more recently, Eric took post in Antarctica, working at the South Pole Station in 2000. Eric Hecker, welcome to the Hero Paranormal Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me on today. I'm happy to be here.
It's been a long time that I have wanted to have you on the podcast. You have such an amazing and unique, amazing story, uncanny experiences. First of all, mad props for coming to us from Alaska, one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And I know that all the things I love to do seemingly are better up there, whether it's fly fishing, camping, hiking, biking, etc. And before we get into the juicy stuff, and trust me, it's all juicy when it comes to this type of talk, at least for me, and your personal story is so intriguing, I don't know how far we need to go back to give folks a rundown on how society is programmed and seeing some of the common downfalls that I guess normal people don't notice is being done to them. How far do we need to go back? Is it 9/11 or is it, how far would you like to go back?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess dealing in facts and reality, all I can say is that I know at the very least from my own experience, I know that there are programs that are dealing with children prenatal, which was what I experienced. And I know that these programs predate my birth. So I think, how about we just start with everybody looking at their own experience and understanding that manipulations in your life may have started way earlier than you could have previously imagined.
Wow. And it's even prenatal. That's amazing.
Right. There's a lot of folks that have been in programs that, you know, genetic engineering and things like that, they were looking to manufacture a product. So they were, you know, from the womb to the tomb, so to say, on some of these programs.
Oh, that's a creepy way to put it.
But that's what's going on. So, like, that's like, you know, I would like to say that, you know, we can go back to the beginning, but the reality is that what we're experiencing contemporarily is more or less technologies that people are trying to do, which are representative of techniques that are from time immemorial.
Mm-hmm.
We're dealing with energies effectively, and there's some folks that are in the know, and there's some folks that are not in the know. And the folks that are in the know are very much taking advantage of the folks not in the know.
And this seems to be a thing that has been done throughout time. It is wild how...
Exactly. it's hard for me to say where do we go for the beginning. You know, I know my childhood was not what was presented to me, so I'm trying to connect the dots and find out, you know, where does it start. And it seems that this is just an ongoing thing, that we know that the psyche of humanity is both complex, fragile, and not what we thought.
Mm-hmm. And the mystery of it all, the mystery schools, how a lot of people point the fingers at this, and how elemental are they to the ruling elite? Is there a proliferance of this, or is it more just kind of a scapegoat?
It's totally a scapegoat contemporarily. Like, don't get me wrong, you can't negate the mystery schools from the equation, but in a way, it would be like blaming the library.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a fountain of information. These mystery schools, these old organizations, whatever you want to call them, that people belong to, and they'll say, "Oh, it's, you know, the Illuminati this, or it's the Freemasons, or something like that." When I hear that stuff, it just sounds to me like painting with the broad brush by a different brushstroke.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's still prejudiced across the board. It's still finger pointing and blaming someone else for your own problems, as if any one group is all one thing and not another.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I look at like these ancient mystery schools as just fountains of information, and we should, you know, look into the value of that information. I mean, therein lies the great work that we're supposed to do as individuals, is expose ourselves to knowledge and gain a position using discernment. I mean, people say, what's the meaning of life? I mean, like, that's kind of it right there. You know, but really instead, what we're doing is we're being deviated from that path. We're being handed these technological wizardry, and instead of thinking anymore, we're regurgitating what an electronic device says.
So true. Just losing ourselves in it.
Right. Is that not like mind control right now? Are we not currently in the throes of losing our minds?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is, we think it's a need, and I guess it really is not a need, but, you know, as I notice generations since mine, I'm a little older, not to date myself, but it seems that, you know, it's even hard for me to put down the device for a week or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
I get that.
Yeah.
I totally see it. I mean, I was at South Pole. It was from November of 2010 to November of 2011. So it was, you know, before the mad dash of everybody being glued to their smartphone. But it was a solid disconnect for me from all other technology that I was exposed to prior. So with that clean break, when I came back, I didn't really have a desire to jump into the tech wave that everybody was riding. Because to me, it already looked like a solid addiction to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I think it's so fascinating that you got to go down there, and it really is one of the stranger bases on the planet. How deep do we want to go into the childhood Black projects? How did you become aware, Eric, that this may be part of your history?
Through studying the programs and what was going on and trying to ascertain where we are now, I couldn't separate. My memories were starting to become more grounded in reality. There was a lot of things that happened to me as a child that made no sense, and the things that I was looking into now, it was making sense of the memories that I had from my childhood, and it framed it in the CIA DIA remote viewing project that was based on what the Monroe Institute was doing, and the work of Itzhak Bentov, his book called Stalking the Wild Pendulum on the mechanics of consciousness. It was basically, that was kind of the curriculum that was being utilized in the program, and it was through studying that stuff now that I was able to look back and go, this is what they were doing to us, you know, when I was a kid in the library. Now it makes sense. No one was explaining it to me back then. They were just running us, you know, through the program.
Mm-hmm. And it's just so fascinating when you hear about these special, was it an after school program, a during school program? They usually use school as a cover, don't they?
I gather, I don't want to say usually because
Sure.
I'm not an expert, I'm speaking on my own experiences, but certainly it was going on during school time, straight up, without pause. It happened on school property, and with regularity they would remove us from school property on what they would call a religious retreat, and we would go to this property known as Inishfada, which is Gaelic, which means Long Island. At the time that this edifice was constructed, it was the fourth largest residence in the country. And it was raised by the Brady family, which was a very wealthy, elite, Jesuit-supporting family. They were very intertwined with the Jesuits. So we were brought to this Jesuit facility, and that's where we started getting, I shouldn't say starting, I don't know. We got continued MK Ultra type, trauma-based SRA, Yahoo Fun Time stuff.
Yeah, and it is, I like that you said continued. Now, if I'm not mistaken, there were some strange things that took place. You had, it was at eye drops, is that correct?
That is correct. They would administer eye drops to us when we first got into the library. And it was, to my understanding, I just read recently, the title, I had folks tell me that it was a derivative of LSD. And I found something recently that there's a derivative called LSD 25. And I believe that might be the one that they were using. It was like a fast-acting, low-latency, LSD, I guess.
Yeah, that's what you would want, something that you can turn on and turn off. I mean, that's kind of how this programming works, right?
To the best of my recollection, I'm thinking that it was like it lasted about 45 minutes or so. And this is a stretch back in my memory banks, but I do recall that when I got out of the library, I was trying to expedite my departure from the library so that I could maintain my presence in the front lobby of the hallway, which was south-facing and big, giant glass windows, and the light would be beaming in, and it was in the afternoon. And if I timed everything correctly, I could hang out in the lobby for a while my eyes had this very yellow tinge to it. It's like I was wearing yellow lensed sunglasses.
Whoa. Yeah.
And then it would wear off, and I would get back to class, before I got in trouble for being late.
Unreal. Absolutely unreal. And it now, was it military in any aspects that you remember, or was your experience more school related?
It was more school related. The folks could have been military for all I know in civvy clothing. I gather there was that going on. I don't recall any uniformed military presence at the school or on the retreats.
Sure. Yeah. And it is, now.
But now, in that capacity, though, I'm putting this story short, I guess. The town that I grew up in, I mean, literally the entire community was the first suburb in the United States and it housed the returning World War II veterans. So in a way, you couldn't get out of things being military in my community.
Yeah, probably.
Everyone was a veteran. Everyone had a backstory. Everybody was involved in some shit at some point.
And
so it was weird in that capacity.
And
we were next door to Northrop. We were next door to Grumman, Bethpage, where the lunar module was constructed.
Whoa. And it's those synchronicities kind of putting you in all the right places at the right times. It seems throughout your life, this kind of followed you as you grew up, didn't it? These strange synchronicities.
Absolutely. The house that I grew up in. So I was born in the town that the lunar module was birthed in as well. And then I resided in the next town over. The next town over had the Long Island Aviation Country Club, way back when Long Island was a bunch of potato farms and rich people living on the North Shore.
Wow.
The people on the North Shore had an aviation country club, which was considered the finest aviation country club in the country, and it had folks like Charles Lindbergh on the membership roster.
Unbelievable.
So now, consider at the time period that the Long Island Aviation Country Club existed, air flight was new. But I gather whatever was going on in the air prior to us figuring out air flight has been going on since time immemorial. So I believe that the folks at the Long Island Aviation Country Club would have been some of the first people in our country to regularly come into contact with UFOs and UAPs. I also believe that it makes logical sense that when the Long Island Aviation Country Club closed up shop, sold its property to William Levitt, and he built Levittown, of which my house rested on their property proper. Where my house was built was on former Long Island Aviation Country Club property.
Wow.
And I think that when the pilots all left with their flying ships, that the folks that were interested in what they were doing simply just came back and kept looking.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have been a kid in proximity.
Amazing. Amazing. And this kind of interesting coincidence or synchronicities that kind of followed you along, it kind of got into your employment career, to put it lightly. Is that correct?
Yeah, big time. Yes, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that there was some sort of hand coordinating some of my employment situations. And I don't know who to credit that to, but my resume is just off the wall, the different places that I've worked.
Yeah. That's so cool.
I mean, I've stood face to face with Dr. Paul of the Paul Corporation, of hanging out with Oppenheimer and Manhattan Project folk. I used to do plumbing for Dr. Paul, both at his facilities and his house.
Wow. Yeah. What are the odds of something like that? It's just fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just there's too many coincidences. There's too many odd links in my chain that I have this massive chain of oddities strung about me.
And your employment also kind of ventured a little bit into the military with your submariner position. Is that correct?
Yep, I did a short stint in the submarine service, and it was very eye-opening.
What did you find out while you were?
It's a high technological field. Submarines are the greatest testament to the technological advancement of mankind that the vast majority of people will never, ever get to see or probably comprehend. I was just having a conversation with one of my roommates over here. Up here in Alaska, there's, all this hubbub that one of the military bases, which is close to Mount Hayes, which is close to the UFO and the pyramids, but this base is getting what they're calling the first commercial micronuclear reactor. Whoa. Like as if it's some technological wonder and advancement in mankind. like it's not just the power plant of a submarine or a Navy vessel just on land. It's not that simple, folks. I mean, come on. So it was interesting to me because we were having this talk, and it turned out that my roommate didn't know that submarines and lots of Navy vessels had nuclear reactors on them, and I apparently was taking it for granted that this was common knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me the disconnect between lots of society and where we are actually at technologically, what these things cost us, who's responsible for it, why we should just be all better off for it, and how the industrialization of the world didn't really do anything but enslave us.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly didn't make our lives easier. We certainly don't have more time to recreate now that all the machines are here making our lives easier. Now we have 2-income households instead of one. What happened there?
Yeah, and they're usually just scraping to get by. It's wild.
Exactly. It's a prison planet. We're getting lied to 6 ways from Sunday, and I'm just trying to let folks know because I'm finding real deal technology that's working against us in some peculiar places on the planet.
Man, and one of the peculiar places that you went to work at was the South Pole, Antarctica. Was it McMurdo, the base that you went to?
No, I was all the way down to South Pole proper.
Oh, how cool. And that had to be an eye-opening experience as well.
Oh, absolutely. It was, first and foremost, a continuation of how messed up the government is and the programs that we're funding. It was like it really did blow my mind as a taxpayer. It's just like, wow, Totally makes sense. Everything's just, expensive. There's no incentive to do things efficiently or correctly. So, as a tradesman, there's that nauseating aspect of having to function in proximity to the government. So that was very eye-opening because it's, a deep program. So it gets, I guess, even more money and more waste, I guess, expense waste type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that was frustrating. But other than that, the program itself, the people in the program are high caliber folk, I would just say, in that capacity. It was fun to be with a crew that was very competent, to say the least. That was a lot of fun. You're dealing with folks that are expert level at dealing with problems and getting through stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think it's always fascinating how these projects are, like you said, very open budget. Seemingly cost has no,
Right.
there's like an endless amount of checks for these projects. And then when you ask about them, very little information coming back to the public as to what is being done down there.
Correct. Yep, they have all these like smoke screen stories about, cosmic rays and counting planets, which is all well and good. But then when you look at what they say something like this costs, and then you look at the return on that investment as a taxpayer, I'm like, well, I get that it's important to count stars and stuff like that, and there's some scientific value to it, but at what cost?
Mm-hmm.
Is $1 million a good deal? Is $1 billion too much? Is $1 trillion ridiculous? If it is, what if they're spending $5 trillion? What if people don't know? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So at what point is the science not worth it? Or at what point do we question if they're strictly doing science, or is there simply something else going on because it can't cost that much money to do stuff sometimes? At least not as presented.
Exactly. And being in a place like that, I don't know why my mind goes to like deep underground military facilities. And, after seeing what you've seen, how likely do you think deep underground military bases are?
How likely do I think they are? 100%. Yeah. I think 100% deep underground military bases, as presented by many whistleblowers before me, I support that 100%. In my experience, if it's something nefarious that good people can think of, by the time we thought of it, it's way too late that the bad people have invested heavily in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That seems to be par for the course of the history of this planet.
And I'm with you. I think they're 100% as well. And you take places like NORAD, for example. And we're talking very old technology at this point. And I've ran into a lot of people that didn't even know it existed. And when you explain what it is comprised of, their minds are blown. And this is really old technology comparatively.
Totally understood. It's a deep underground military base is just a giant hole with expensive to provide utilities.
Yes.
That's all that's going on technologically speaking. So does that lead me to believe that there's some challenge that can't be overcome with some deception and taxpayer money? Not in the slightest. Mm-hmm. I think logic dictates that we have to presume that it's going on. Otherwise, we're being naive. There's a difference between being ignorant and nescient. Nescience is when the knowledge has never been presented to you, so being unknowing is acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But ignorance is when the truth has been presented to you and you still choose to look the other way. That's just being ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of folks nowadays, I think, are just simply being ignorant to the world around them. Because there's truth everywhere if they pay attention to what's going on and they stop getting distracted.
It's just so comfortable nowadays to not have an opinion. It is just so comfortable for, I think, a lot of people to not get engaged with anything. They just...
I agree that I see that going on. I find it like disgusting when someone doesn't have an opinion. I find them lame
Yeah.
when they can't pick a side on, when they can't make a decision. Like, I'm not saying that you had to have had one before, but if you're in the middle of a conversation and it's the topic's there and you have information on stuff, pull the trigger, pick a side, have a backbone on stuff nowadays.
It's a rarity.
People are way too wishy-washy now. It used to be rare that people were wishy-washy. Now it's commonplace.
Mm-hmm.
And what they'll wind up doing is if you try to get an opinion out of them, what they'll do is they'll grab their smartphone and they'll grab a link that supports an idea that they won't necessarily even align themselves to, but the link means something now. And you're supposed to back up when someone gives you a link to something.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing as a casual observer now of all the technology addicts. That seems to be what happens.
Yeah. Add some independent fact checkers in there, and you've got yourself a basis.
Yeah. There you go. Yep. Now you have a grounded, almost opinion.
It's so true. And there is a lot of technology that's used in the South Pole that would lead me to believe that we have the capacity to create these deep underground military bases with ease. Did you see anything that gave you that impression?
Well, just the logistics at South Pole in particular, it's taught me that it's a lot easier to drill in the ice than people believe. It's ice, folks. It's not rock. It's the constant of ice, which, as it turns out, you can just apply steam, and guess what happens to the ice? Ta-da! It goes away. So they have what they call steam drilling teams. They're just boring holes in the ice with steam. So from what I saw, it's actually really easy to get deep underground, so to say, or deep under ice in Antarctica. So I speculate that what I saw going on the surface could certainly have been some sort of logistics line or connectors or something for stuff below us. I could have been riding topside of a deep underground military base from what it looked like from my angle.
Sure, yeah. And you would never know, really. It'd be hard to tell.
Just the benefit of compartmentalization. Everything's distributed on a need-to-know basis, and for the most part, people in their compartments are giddy as long as nobody outside their compartment gives them a problem inside their compartment. They don't even realize they're being trained to be complicit and complacent at the same time just by being compartmentalized and told everything's fine in your compartment.
It's so true. It's like the programming of society. And I've noticed this at least in Nevada, where I'm currently broadcasting from. And you try to get something done here, and it's like, if you need to get a wall done, you need to get the framer, the plaster guy, the painter, you have to get, by the time you're done, there's not one guy that can do anything more than just his compartmentalized job. And this is becoming, yeah, exactly. Same thing with the doctor. You have a problem, you have to see a specialist.
Mm-hmm. Yes. There's a time in society. There has to be a way for us to measure it. I'm sure there's smarter people than I that have been on this task before. But there was a time, if we go back into the past, that each individual held like all of the knowledge of the society. Like, you could do all of the things. Back in the day, a farmer knew how to fix his wagon wheel. He knew how to build a house. He knew how to till a field. He knew how to, to water the fields. All these things they could figure out, and everyone knew the same stuff. Everybody shared this same common knowledge because there weren't specialists. There were just people that were wholly competent. And sometime in life, things started to change. And I am going to suggest that it wasn't the wholly competent people. It was incompetent people trying to drive a wedge in society and increase the value of themselves. It used to be that every man had a toolkit in his garage, and from that toolkit, he could fix any car he bought. Mm-hmm. And every guy in every garage had the same mentality and skills, and they were wholly competent. They still knew how to put the roof on the house. They still knew how to build a shed. They still knew how to grow stuff in the yard. but more division was applied, more specialists were demanded, created, inculcated in society. And I would say that these were compartments that were manufactured to divide us and to make us less wholly competent.
It does seem like a very scripted process when you look back to the 50s, where, like you mentioned, everybody was very capable. And you fast forward, it doesn't take long before it seems like a scripted process where what you do for a living is the only thing you do for a living.
I'm not going to deny that there are certainly plenty of unhappy marriages in the past, and that there were some poor choices and some poor husbands that didn't treat women correctly. But what I will not believe is that there was so many women that are our equals that made so many poor decisions that we had to change everything, because it turned out they were such poor decision makers that they were all so unhappy in their home life. They were all so unhappy that everything had to change so fast with all of the media blitz and all of the investing. Like, we're watching right now how the media lies and invests to create these schemes in society, these belief streams. And I'm all for equality and people being happy, but what I'm not going to believe is that all of these women back in these houses back in the day in a single income home, when life seems pretty grand to me compared to today, when everybody's stressed and taxed out and everyone's working and still not getting by, looking back at those times, seems like it was pretty damn good.
Yeah.
I don't think they were actually as unhappy as we were told.
No, I don't think so either.
I think a lot of people would be really happy right now to be like, you know what, honey, if you can go to work and you can cover all the bills, I would be so happy to not have to work and stay at home and just finally take care of this house, throw a good meal on the table instead of McDonald's. I believe that's very possible.
It's hard to explain to some of the younger generations. Again, I don't want to date myself, but I mean, yeah.
And I'd be fine with it shoe being on the other foot, by the way, lest any ladies want to get mad out there. I am an equal opportunity person. If any gal out there wants to be fully empowered contemporarily, I'm ready to be taken care of. I will stay home, cook and clean and take care of the house. You can go out and work all day long. Dinner will be ready when you get home. I would love that.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
And can you pay my bills? Can you pay my telephone bills?
And that was very simple. I wouldn't even call it. This is something that no matter how far back you go, it's hard without stepping on any toes. But this is something that started tribally, and it just worked, and so people continued that effort. It's not until we do notice these black budget projects, these advanced technologies, these military, almost like a scripted, it's
designs. How about the word designs? We see these designs in our society, and they didn't happen overnight. These folks that are billionaires, in the early 1900s, there was plotters and schemers that came up with the Federal Reserve and income tax. Folks, this didn't exist always. There was a time before, and there was a different reason, and there was a why and a wherefore, and there were designs back then. And those same designers never stopped designing. And we're just looking at the end result of what they did.
It's uncanny, the difference.
They broke up the family unit with ease over time. That's all. They didn't do it overnight, but the family unit in the U.S., which used to be awesome, as history showed us, wasn't as foul as everybody presented. Nothing's perfect, but we certainly had a time period in the past where the whole planet seemed to want to come to here for a reason. But everybody forgets that.
Yeah, this was the place to be, and it seems like through some strange alchemy and all the finances through bankers and everything has been changed. We're now, like you said, everybody is working and paying taxes, even the kids.
Our founding fathers created a country that had many benefits but many pitfalls. They identified them all. and they told us we were going to have to work hard to keep this republic. I just think we got caught not working hard enough, and the lazy folks got us to take our efforts and work against each other while ignoring them behind the scenes, manipulating the pitfalls that our forefathers told us about, and we've just become very ignorant to what's going on around us and the machinations of manipulation. The world is not the way that it's supposed to be. We, the people, through solidarity, can fix it any day we want to if we stop being deceived and confused.
And that confusion, that deception, that slavery, that money creation power of the state, and the way that it seems that, the same banks that took all of people's money in the Depression are now trusted with everything and charging interest. And it's just as if it went from an actual money system to a debt system, is the way it seems to me.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. That's exactly what did happen. We got a bait and switch. We have a central banking system that has nothing to do with the government or the people. It has no expiration date. It's the first time we've had a central banking system that was ongoing. We had 2 central banks before this one. They both expired for good reason. They're not for the benefit of the people. They're against the people. We have an outside authority controlling our money. That's not how our nation's supposed to work in the slightest. It just allows for our we get fleeced. The fruits of our labors go to someone else, designed by inflation.
And man, is that ever a real thing? I was looking the other day at those, just the liter Pepsis or Cokes at your 7-Eleven. 10 years ago, those used to be 99 cents, and now they're $2.50. So if you do that math per year, it's unreal the value that has been lost in our money. I mean, and think of that big equation too. Like, look at that. What is Coca-Cola and Pepsi between the two of them? The billions of dollars they must pull in every year, right? Mm-hmm. What do they sell? Poison. Nothing. Yeah, it's like
officially, what is that product? It's poison. There's no nutritional value. There's nothing good about ingesting that. Think about that, folks. You go buy soda pop, Coke, Cola, whatever you want to call it. That's not food. It's poison. It's straight. Like, come on. Like, this is like, remember the original Batman movie with Jack Nicholson? That's the plot of that movie is what's going on in the world around us contemporarily. The evil people have placed a little poison here, a little poison there. You eat the right concoction, you're a dead man. That was the plot of the Joker's scheme in that movie.
It is so true. These are not foods or nourishing. They're all just food-like products. And I mean, in the case of, I think the Coke and Pepsi is perfect because we all know it. The association has been made at this point. And it's crucial to note this, that we all know that it's just sugar and water. It's the worst for us.
You wish it was just sugar and water.
Yeah,
Look at
right.
the actual ingredients.
That's true.
If we were in a chemistry lab and I had a bunch of beakers of things, and I started reading off to you just the ingredients of soda pop, but that's what was in the beaker bubbling away, and I was like, you want to drink it? I'll give you $1 if you drink it. You'd be like, get out of here.
So true.
You're like, I'm not drinking your chemical poison concoction, no matter how much money you give me. And then you'd leave and be like, oh, by the way, I'm thirsty. You want a Coke?
The branding is so good. The marketing. And like you said, this is how they've done it. This is an amazing tool. And it's now in our pockets. We pull it out and off the charts. We can be sold anything if we are on our devices enough.
There was just an article posted the other day. We'll bring this full spectrum right back to South Pole and mind control and the ice cube neutrino detector. I just saw an article posted the other day where they stated very clearly, commercial organizations are now looking into the possibility of being able to pump commercials into your dreams at night.
You're kidding me.
No, this is exactly the point of what I'm getting at. So you know what? Guess what they've been doing for decades if they're going to talk about it now publicly? If they're publicly going to say, McDonald's is looking into a way right now to put the idea of a Big Mac in your head so that you buy one for lunch tomorrow. Well, guess what other people have been doing for decades if the technology is going public now?
Mm-hmm.
It's already been going on. Every dream that you've had in your life has probably been impacted by a technology to this point. Folks, hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Your whole life you've been living in a world where the technology exists for them to mess with you in ways that go beyond any science fiction film you've currently been presented.
And, for people that don't believe this, if they try going out to somewhere like where you live, or you just go out into the country away from all these smart meters and 5G technology, I mean, there is something that you cannot explain that is different. And that's what it is.
Right. Yep. Yeah, there's a presence, there's an energy. I was in New York back when they had that big electrical grid failure that took out like the northeast quadrant of the U.S.
No way.
It was a tangible, different feeling when the grid went off. It felt so much nicer, was just the way to put it. You could feel it. Everyone felt it.
That's horrifying. Here in my community, they're starting to put in all the 5G towers that are bouncing from one to the other, and they don't ask anybody. And the interesting thing is my daughter has been having, she's just a toddler, having really hard time sleeping. I went outside, and this was on somebody's recommendation, and sure as crap, I had one of those smart meters on the side of our house. We moved her bed from the wall to the innermost part of her bedroom, and immediately started sleeping all night long. So I think, in my mind, there's something to it.
There absolutely is. These are frequencies that they know engage the human frequency. They're designed for it. They know in so many capacities that it interacts, so they're being negligent at best by incorporating these things into these technologies, and there's a lot more room for more nefarious activities since the U.S. government has been caught so many times doing experiments on their own citizens and other citizens unknowingly.
Yes, and I recently spoke with a former CIA person who was talking about friends of his, some haven't, but many have heard about this Havana syndrome and some of these technologies, I believe V2K, and they have some other names. This is something that is now finally being at least given a little bit of traction. And it's remarkable that it's high time to ignore it anymore, but to not engage with it, it's amazing how many people they just can't break out of that comfort zone to even engage with the idea that public development might be alternatively adjusted and scripted for the benefit of not the public.
Right. Correct. There's a farm culture going on here that people aren't aware of as of yet. Mm-hmm. It's going to be very shocking to them when they find out that they're in the herd. There's the program's been going on for quite some time, and it's maddening to start to see it, but it's a cognitive dissonance that's just keeping people locked into their perspective, because I do believe once people do have their eyes open, I believe human nature is that we don't like to get involved with stuff. We don't like to, I should say, we delude ourselves so that we don't get involved with things. We do that to ourselves because we also know once we know something is wrong, we will work towards fixing it. Mm-hmm. So I think oftentimes we delude ourselves on a group level for too long.
Yeah, we just have that. I agree. And I'm my fear, of course, is where is it headed? Will people rise above some of these things and realize that some of these, just through the declassified projects, you can tell that they're, you don't have to connect that many dots to realize that there is a pattern. How in the world are people going to rise above this without getting too weird about it? But I mean, at this point, we have everyone locking themselves at home, practically on ankle monitors for their own quote unquote safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The first thing people need to start doing is whatever they want, not what they're told, I mean, straight up, like you said, the ankle monitor thing, the stuck at home. Learn to start saying no. Anytime anybody's telling you something to do and you don't want to do it, have the conviction to say in their face with a grin, no. It's the strongest word we have, because no one can make you do anything you don't want to do. And anybody who's trying to make you do something you don't want to do should always be challenged.
Mm-hmm.
We should just start functioning that way again, like we used to. We shouldn't acquiesce, and we shouldn't listen to the deceptions regurgitated through our neighbors because they've been properly programmed. What we should do is, as individuals, remember that we have opinions that we can maintain, we have rights that we can maintain, we have perspectives and positions we can maintain, and we don't have to agree with anyone around us. Homogeneousness is not the goal of life.
Mm-hmm. Amen. That's a good strategy. And, you know, it's wild to think that these conveniences, you know, that the other day I was speaking with some people and they were talking about this DoorDash, Postmates, Grubhub type stuff where if you have it good now, you get your food like Meals on Wheels, like you were a elderly person on hospice that can't get out of the house. And this is the conclusion that a lot of people are, this is if you have it, you know, I don't like it. I don't know what's being done to my food. I don't know where it's coming from. You don't know who's bringing it to you. It's convenient. I won't argue with the convenience, but that suppression of, it's just more compartmentalization where you're not even able to go and get your own food from a public development standpoint. It's all of a sudden you have, you know, less
it's
skill.
Dependency training. It's just dependency training.
Exactly. Exactly. It's fascinating how little time, at least in my opinion, how little time it's taken for everything, you know, everybody wants everything done wirelessly and effortlessly.
Conveniently. They want things done conveniently, but I feel that if we pay enough attention to things that come through us through convenience, by any definition, those things will make you lazier and weaker in that department.
Yes.
You get convenient food from a convenience store, I would suggest it's not as good for you. It'll make you lazier and weaker than if you had gotten a wholesome meal that was less convenient.
That's right. The convenience is the killer.
Yeah, if you conveniently just flip on the evening news and get your information conveniently as spewed to, you know, some mainstream media thing, I will say that your thoughts will be lazier and weaker than someone who has actually worked for their information instead of taking the convenient path.
And, you know, yeah, the fascinating thing about this enslavement of mankind is that we are okay with it. This is like what is,
Yes.
It's unreal.
Totally. This has been understood at the very least, what did they say in Roman times? Give them bread and circuses.
Mm-hmm.
Are we not in a world of bread and circuses right now?
Totally.
Everything about us is a distraction and a handout. And no one works for anything anymore because they've all been made lazy and weak through convenience.
Yeah, that's true. That is so true. And with the argument of that's not my specialty, I've heard people.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. I don't know. How would I know? I don't know. Maybe think.
mm-hmm.
Try. Learn. Pull the trigger. Take a shot. When you miss, make a correction. That's how you learn to become proficient, through application of effort. Right thought followed by right action. And you don't know if you had right thought if you never go to action. You have to go to action, find out if your initial thought was correct. If it was wrong, make an assessment and adapt and make a new action. And that's how you learn and grow. That's experiencing life instead of Googling it.
And it's so scary that, like you said, the bread and circuses of ancient times, they have not changed the playbook. This patterning is the same. Nothing has changed.
Yes.
And
correct. Yep.
It's just fascinating.
The German philosopher Hegel, everybody uses the term Hegelian dialectic nowadays, and that's a reference to him and this thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And effectively that boils down to problem, reaction, solution. And we can see it recently. We had the 9/11 event, and prior to 9/11, they had the Patriot Act and all the draconian laws that they wanted to apply, but they said, well, we'll never be able to make this happen. So lo and behold, through problem, reaction, solution, we got 9/11. They created the problem, they had the reaction, and they provided the solution. Now we have the Patriot Act.
Mm-hmm.
And this just keeps going on and on and on. Hegel identified it in the past and was saying this is how the population has been being controlled all of these years. Well, Hegel's dead, and they're still doing it.
And I'm fascinated by the names they use for these things because, like you said, the Patriot Act, it's the farthest thing from Patriot. Right. It's like wild.
Yes, it's almost always like they're selling this stuff on the opposite of what it really is. Like whatever they say it is, it's the opposite. It's unpatriotic act.
It's exactly what it should be called, right? Like yeah. And it does seem like the public, at least getting what they can from the government and the state, they have believed just about everything coming down the pipe so far. I'm super worried, of course, I think anybody would be, that whatever's going on behind the curtain, that things are worse than they're making it seem. And that's always been like my big fear. Hey, if things are economically awesome, then who cares? You're going to end up with something like, what is that movie? I just saw a movie about, it's very realistic, Idiocracy. Very realistic.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a documentary at this point.
It is a documentary at this point. And where everybody's lazy, they don't need to do anything except for what they do, and they have to do that at a very minimal level. And that's if things go well. The problem will become, where do we put all our garbage? But if things don't go well, I mean, there's a lot that can go wrong when nobody can do anything for themselves, and the jack of all trade is literally, the enemy of the state.
That's exactly why I'm yelling from the mountaintops at this point. Is I don't want to be the stick in the mud or the naysayer. It's not that I don't have hope. It's not that I'm afraid. I keep getting people laying that at my feet. I'm not at all. I'm in the front lines fighting, and I'm just letting people know what I'm seeing. I'm on point. Mm-hmm. I'm not on point because I'm scared. I'm not on point because I don't have hope. I'm on point because I want people to follow me in a winning direction. Mm-hmm. And that means understanding what our true enemy is on this planet. What are we really up against? I don't want to be ignorant because I've seen what's really going on. I don't want to keep my perspective down with all of the riffraff paying attention to the mass media, and what the mass media is telling them is the threat they need to pay attention to. Those are lies. Anything that the mass media is talking about. Mark Twain once said back in the day that anytime he finds himself in the majority, he removes himself because by definition there's already enough people with that opinion.
Yes.
So folks, as a practice, do that. If you find yourself in the majority, get out of it immediately. It's a trap. You got tricked.
Yeah, that's the
truth.
truth.
There's too much technology available to make that very easy for people to pay for an opinion to grow in society. And if you find yourself in the majority, you got bought.
And where do you draw the line, I guess? Do you start, if you start changing your own oil, you get your neighbors looking at you like you're a Neanderthal. And that's just doing something that's very small and not a big deal. So how, from a philosophy standpoint,
take pride in your neighbor looking at you funny. Take pride in your newfound competency. Look down on them. Don't take the reverse. People treat you how you let them. Through gaining skills, you will have an air of confidence that that person's look won't matter. Mm-hmm. What will wind up happening is that in reality, that person will come over to you and ask what you're doing and how to do it and what's going on. And this is called being a neighbor. This used to happen back in the day. Because we don't do these things anymore is why we're at great distance from a person who lives 20 feet away from our house.
So true, man. So true.
We used to engage. We used to say things like, hey, buddy, I'm trying to change my oil filter and it's jammed. My wrench kind of sucks. Do you have a better one? Yeah, let me go into my garage in my toolkit that's pretty much like yours, but I happen to have a cooler oil wrench than you do. So here. Oh, here's a beer. Let's be friends and neighbors. Keep an eye out for each other and our community.
So true.
Oh, but I forgot. We were told it was terrible back in the day when that was going on. It was a horrible way to live.
You know, it sounds bad, but I mean, really, it was wonderful. You know, those Saturday Evening Post type memories of that's just how it was. You actually waved at your neighbor. You know, you didn't look at him like he was a spy that was going to turn you in for having too many people.
You know the name of every single person that lived on your block. How many people can say that now?
Yeah.
Probably knew the phone number of every single person living on the block when I was a kid. And then, you know, it's like it was a different world. And people are going to try to convince us that this is better, and it's a farce.
And, you know, I think it is, at least in the bigger cities, it's getting pretty bad where neighbors are actually more like, they just keep an eye on each other. They're Karens, you know, basically going towards that homeowners association.
There's certain cities in this country right now, there's about to be a bounty that neighbors can collect on if you don't like the way someone's medical decisions are going.
Jeez. Now, this is new. I have not heard this one. What is this?
In cities like New York, where they're talking about mandated medical practices, and if your neighbor's not following along, you can rat them out and get paid. Stuff like that is occurring. These are the draconian measures that are happening in some places, and this is how they push the line. Areas like New York and California will have the most draconian laws applied at the fastest rate to test the line. And other places, they'll test the line at different rates because they are assessing the people and the herd. And they know over here in Pen A is the more uppity pen. So we can't start putting the draconian laws on the herd over here. We have to go over here to the California pen, where it's easy to make them bow.
And, you know, it is turning into some pretty far back thinking that where it seems people are not thinking for themselves. At least it seems crucial to me to point that out where, you know,
I couldn't agree more.
Oh my gosh. Some of this, I don't even want to bring some of it up, but you know, and where I guess where we're all headed is exactly, you know, that class of idiocracy where you just believe what you're told. And as long as you get some basic pay for some basic effort you do, and you have a comfortable place to plop your butt down and watch TV, that's kind of where a lot of society is going. What is going to happen to that portion of society? Or will they, like Darwin said, will they just eventually peter out?
Well, it seems right now there are factions that are actively trying to kill them. I don't believe what's in this in the syringe is intended to help anybody. I think that's a bold-faced lie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's meant to kill people. It's a bold-faced lie. Their plan is to kill massive amounts of people. Their previous poisoning process and dumbing down of people has dumbed them down and made them lazy and weak through conveniences that they're now, like Hegel said, problem, reaction, solution. They created a problem, they know the reaction, and the people are now begging for a false solution, which comes in a syringe. They've just been lied to and tricked. This is population control.
And, you know, it becomes...
They want a lot of people dead.
Yeah. And
here it comes. And people are going to ask for it, just like Hegel said.
And, you know, you don't have to do a lot of research into some of these and into the rundown of some of how this societal programming, at least from an international class of, it seems like bankers, gangsters, and very international always, where, the power of one country just isn't enough anymore. They want the power of all countries. And it doesn't take too much digging into some of that to come to the conclusion where you hear terms like useless eaters and these other terms that are just horrific from a public standpoint. So, I mean, it's hard to argue that there's not, that's not exactly what's taking place.
Yeah, there's a higher echelon of folks, so to say, that look at the masses, like you said, they just consider them useless eaters, like wasters of their resources, as if they already own the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just encroaching upon their stuff.
It is.
That aspect of society exists, and it's, I know most people are too busy paying their mortgages to consider that this exists or how that impacts them. But the reality is it's impacted everybody's entire life because these people have always existed, and they have been molding society around you all unbeknownst to you. Welcome to the farm.
Mm-hmm. It's remarkable. It really is. The control.
It's an amazing device, but you have to lift your head up from the herd and look around and pay attention to see the machinations.
So before we start wrapping things up here, Eric, tell our listeners about Deciphering My Experience and where they can keep up with you and all that you have going on. You
got it. I can be found on YouTube. It's one word, Deciphering My Experience. I put some of the more tame, lame interviews that the mass media won't be tearing apart on there, but I still am tactical enough to get good content. As far as my full-blown stuff, where I report everything and I have documents archived to prove what I'm saying, if you could please go to deciphering.tv, and that's where I am doing the more hard-hitting stuff. And please like, subscribe, and share my content because I do need help getting it out there. The shadow ban hammer is strong in the AI world, and it does not like what I am trying to communicate. So please help me out and get this info out there.
And the shadow ban is so real. The associations that are made. Oh, my gosh. I mean, you can't really look at anything without seeing independent fact checkers, warnings, labels on posts. It's just, I mean, nothing is raw and rugged anymore, and any opinion has to be gone. It has to go through a filter. It's
everybody apparently wants to hear about what's really going down at the South Pole Station in Antarctica. I've spent a year there. I have documents. I have videos. I can prove stuff, but yet somehow the internet doesn't seem to be able to get traction on my information to move it around.
Yes. That great.
I guess the internet and all the algorithms have somehow failed this one particular info stream.
It's amazing. It's so crucial what you're doing. It's so important, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and I know a lot of other people do. Your experiences working and seeing through this smoke screen. Can't thank you enough for coming on, my man. And let's do it again soon.
Awesome, Ryan. I really appreciate the time and effort that you put in at the event and the follow-up here. So thank you very much for helping to push the information out there.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Eric Hecker, please support him. He is definitely one of the individuals pushing an alternative philosophy against, well, an international class that is pursuing the consistent enslavement of humanity, at least by the efforts that are being noticed and the practices and strategies that are being used. It doesn't take too much to notice, but he has a fine eye of pointing it out and showing it to the rest. So definitely go over to Deciphering My Experience and show him some love. Until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Eve I seen. Blast off, blast off, blast off.